At this moment in history, the world is waking up to how interconnected and reliant on one another we truly are. While the COVID-19 crisis has laid bare widespread injustices in all facets of society, we have the opportunity and a responsibility to align in solidarity for a better future. Break Free from Plastic members from all over the world have worked out principles for a just recovery to demonstrate our demands and expectations for the world we want to live in. We will lay the groundwork for a just and equitable world. The future is not disposable, and neither are we.
If we look around in our cities, they are full of people like construction workers, domestic help, repairers, and hundreds of thousands of informal workers like waste workers. They save the cities a lot of money in the way of manpower and resources by doing free collection, segregation, and recycling. And yet we treat them very callously when it comes to their health, when it comes to their livelihoods. We cannot afford to treat people as second-class citizens. In India, we witnessed something horrific during the pandemic. Hundreds of thousands of migrant workers left for their villages, walking it because the cities had shut down. Their jobs and incomes were not there anymore. Landlords were throwing them out. Where would they go? Can we afford to make these mistakes again and again? We need compassion for the planet and for people. We need to focus on a recovery, keeping the poor at the center of our solutions. We need to provide the poor with water, with decent housing, with food security. We need to see that health security is free for all. We need to share our commons and our resources. Environments and human rights cannot be compromised.
Houston is the second largest petrochemical complex in the world. One of my family members was recently diagnosed with cancer, and I know a lot of fenceline community members can relate to me because they also have family members that have cancer. And it does make me mad because I think about my relatives and the ones that I have lost, and how if they had better avenues, they would probably still be here with us. The industry write this narrative of them being a positive contributor to the community, and no one really talks about those negative health effects that they create. Why should we deprioritize and divest from extractive industry? It's because they're cutting our lifespan, and it's not right.
We're saving other companies. I think the oil industry is one of the top on the list.
It's crazy that massive amounts of dollars are being directly invested into industry and not into community. The community is really not the priority of the government. There's a lot of community members here that don't have the means to survive, especially right now during COVID, and local-owned businesses that are having to close their doors forever. We're always just so focused on survival mode and making it to the next day that we can't begin to focus on even investing in ourselves or our youth. So that chain needs to be broken, and it starts through community investments. We need to transition the workforce towards sustainable economies and provide free training programs, but also make sure that we're investing in our cultures and those natural systems that don't necessarily always revolve around an economy. We need to start investing in community resiliency, not in corporate interests.
Multinational companies claim that sachets are pro-poor, but they are not. We had a system that worked. For example, if in the past, all I could afford was cooking oil for one frying, all I needed to do was go to the nearest sari-sari or neighborhood store and they would just pour it into my own container. That's it, no problem. I don't think there's a country in the world that has truly sustainably managed single-use plastics. They cannot be managed. They mostly cannot be recycled and they cannot be composted. Countries either just incinerate them, landfill them, or send them to poorer countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. The only way to solve the plastic waste crisis is to stop the production and use of single-use plastic and transition to refill and reuse systems. Corporations need to redesign their delivery systems to become more sustainable. Without single-use plastic in our waste streams, cities and communities will no longer have to deal with these problematic products, and waste will no longer be staying in the environment for many years. Our billions of taxes which are used for the collection and transport of this waste will finally be used for much needed social services. We need systems that work for the people, not against them.
There is a double standard by companies who take advantage of global south communities, producing materials that we have no infrastructure to manage and telling us that the only way out is to invest in false solution technologies such as chemical recycling and incineration. But that only takes us further away from traditional knowledge and principles of reuse, undercuts waste pickers who are extremely valuable to the waste management system, and traps us into this loop of overconsumption. This is unacceptable. Companies need to rethink and redesign their flawed single-use plastic packaging model, but this will never be a voluntary step. Therefore, we need our governments to step up and start to enforce existing laws the way Kenya and Rwanda have done. And we need to add new policies to completely phase out single-use plastic. We also need governments to recognize the role that waste pickers are playing in the system and start investing in infrastructure that's complementary to waste pickers, such as material recovery facilities and mandatory separation at source policies. We need ambitious policy informed by credible third-party science.
Communities in the Ohio River Valley and in Appalachia are no strangers to the boom and bust cycles that accompany the extractive industries. Like clockwork, an extractive industry comes into our community and seduces us with promises of jobs. And whether it's coal, steel, oil and gas, or now petrochemicals, the extractive industries continue to set the political and economic agenda for our region, and they get away with it. Our political leaders, representing moneyed interests rather than those who elected them into office, continue to treat black and brown communities, environmental justice areas, and the homes of the poor and working class as sacrifice zones. Communities have been stripped of the ability to exercise control over what happens in our own backyard. Impacted communities need self-determination. We must support community efforts to hold industry accountable for impacts. Regulators must measure and monitor emissions and health impacts. I dream of a world where we are investing in systems that prioritize care, nurturing, and regeneration. Right now, our communities are struggling to survive. I sincerely believe that another world is possible, where our communities will thrive.